Optor stood alone, illuminated from above, the rest of the room a void of darkness from which only questions were issued. He had been recounting his story of the Antani Crown World and how he had just recently effected his escape. But his retelling had been cross-examined at length and in great detail, and they were now only beginning to get to the events of the final days that Optor had spent on that world. During it all, Optor had not revealed the nature or even the existence of Unka or Lasara, and he had no intention to if he could avoid it. This may be a reasonable and justified precaution, this Hunter's Review panel, but he did not trust a panel of the faceless with the potential safety of those he was now in charge of. However, with the focus of the questioning being far more on the matters of the Antani and the planet itself, this had not proven to be a difficult task. According to your report, you are in possession of high-level Antani research materials. What is the nature of these materials, Hunter and Sorte? Biological samples. It appears that the Antani engage in some variant of biomancy and genetic manipulation. The sample appears to be some form of refined cells. What they are intended for is not clear, although the measures taken to shield them from the natural warping effects of the Antani themselves suggested it was of high importance, as significant measures and resources were obviously spent in the effort. Silence again reigned, as the answer was no doubt being discussed by those in the darkness. Moments later, a new line of inquiry. Going over the facts that you have provided, you are now in possession of a craft that, by your own admission by the facts presented, is impossible. The variant of the vessel you are claiming to be in command of is barely 500 years old as a design, but the internal logs presented, although incomplete, extend to at least 20 times that age. Would you care to speculate on this, Hunter in Sorte? While improbable, it is not anywhere near impossible. The fact that this model of ship is only a few centuries from its creation does not preclude the fact that it could have easily have been displaced temporally. He let his words hang for a moment. As you say, the records are incomplete, especially from the time of the ship's commissioning to its docking with the Sky City's starport. However, from that point to when I claimed Hunter's rights to the vessel, the records are clear, both on the ship and in the city's database. However the ship got there, it has been there for at least 10,000 years, if not significantly longer. While he could only hear silence once again, Optor knew there were intense discussions going on in that silent void, as experts no doubt were summoned to verify the data and to confirm the possibility of Optor's accession. Minutes later, another question. What was the status of the Sky City and its ability to function? Limited functions, mostly emergency systems with some power available to run other systems. powering up the relevant parts of the starport was roughly 90% or so of this available excess. I have included what logs and records were recovered during the process. However, as we had a pursuing force of antennae, a full retrieval attempt was not possible. Then the question he feared, as Optor had caught his slip in his own words. "We?" Optor silently cursed his slip, but he was not unprepared for such an event. "Myself and Trinos. If not for the manner of this meeting, he would be here himself." A few moments as the voice no doubt checked and saw that Trinos was indeed a real and known entity. "Of course, your bonded... forgive me, Hunter. I am looking at the information on him, but I fail to see a designation of species." Trinos is the result of an Analar wartime experimentation on Teldrakes and warpworms, and thus is a one-of-a-kind being. Your confusion is equal to mine trying to figure out how to fill that particular data point out. For the first time, Optor heard a soft laughter return at his response. "Hunter and Sorte, moving on from the provenance of the vessel, I'd like to know exactly what you have laid claim to. Armaments and performance specifications at the very least. Furthermore, I wish to know about the civilians you have taken on board, and moreover, what your intentions are regarding them." Optor took a moment to formulate his response, as, while these were reasonable questions, they were also beyond the norm, albeit only slightly, and Optor was trying to be careful not to offend this review panel, as they could make his life very difficult. It is based on the standard Criterion model shell ship, augmented by 4 aggressor spines. Each spine is configured in a 7-7-4 arrangement, with 7 Star Fury hybrid arrays, 7 swarm drone fighter bays, and supplemented by 4 Grade 5 Phalanx shield arrays. Forward dual weapon fitting consists of a Scramplaz cannon with a 12-120 relativistic Colts as the main. The flanks of each spire is armed with 36 multi-type Colt point defense turrets. Enhancements to the vessel's central processing cores enable full swarm link and cohesion between all systems. Furthermore, each spire features 3 sets of Type 5 triple torpedo launchers, each with a reserve of 12 volleys at least. Ordis was cut off by an astonished outburst. "That's not a colonist or trader's frigate! That's a damn warship!" "Sir, you will contain yourself, or you will be removed from these proceedings." The voice was new to Optor, but its authority was clear. "Please continue, Hunter and Sorte. What kind of communications and drive systems do you have at your disposal?" Standard Criscom systems with an active reach of 5 light years. Salvaged materials and components from Rodkin's Rest have enabled CogCom use. As it was the very Cogcom system that was facilitating this meeting, it felt a little superfluous to add, Optor thought. As far as drive systems, the core exclusion drive is supplemented by all 4 spires via exclusion field methodologies. Until I complete the needed optimizations and refinements, we appear capable of a cruising speed of just under 90 foe, redlining somewhere around 110. And after you get things settled, I expect to see a cruising speed closer to 110, and a max as much as perhaps 125 to 130 foe. And what of the civilians, Hunter? They wish to remain on ship and serve as crew for the time being. They say they owe a debt for their rescue and will not be persuaded otherwise. It took a few minutes this time, with whispers almost audible, before the darkness vanished, and a single man stood before him. He was nearly as tall as Optor was naturally, wearing a heavy armored suit. The NLR before Optor was looking at him with a mix of amusement and caution. Optor, for his part, knew immediately who he was now speaking to. Ordis Skychild alone. Besides being the god of the Cognati and a hero of the realms, he was also rumored to be one of the Hunter's internal affairs top officials. And even if this wasn't the case, he was known to have an outsized amount of pull for his rank, both within the Hunters and the Divine. Lord Skychild alone, I did not think my escapades warranted such a highly respected personage such as yourself. Discovering an Antani crown world, stealing secrets from within their own place of power, finding a vessel that was obviously temporally displaced in which to escape the confinement measures put in place by those very Antani. You are right. None of that should pique my interest. Ordis' smile widened. However, the passengers you have taken aboard and evacuated in your escape does interest me. All of them. Optor didn't try to hide the shock that flashed across his face. It would do no good, as Ordis as a god would have easily been able to catch it one way or the other. What followed was a brief but very earnest set of discussion. First, concerning the civilians, who called themselves the Jamalos. Then, having covered them, their NLR benefactors, and their mutual desire to stay with Optor and his ship, Ordis moved on to the matter of Unka and Lasara. Despite his concerns, which Ordis was not shy about stating, Ordis also laid out a way which Optor and his new friends could stay well clear of the various issues and complications they represented. No details were shared, only what Optor would have to agree to in order to see it done. In short, he was being personally recruited by Ordis into the Star Obsidian, the Internal Affairs Division of the Hunters. Further still, he would be a part of Ordis's Reliquarians, the secret order within the secret order that was the Star Obsidian. They were tasked with the identification and containment of those things that have no other safe place in the realm. Weapons of mass destruction, cursed artifacts, and other threats that could not otherwise be sundered or nullified. Until Optor accepted his offer, the rest would have to wait to be revealed. For security reasons, of course. I'll give you some time to consider. Of course, your friends are not in any danger if you were to refuse. You are more than aware of the wide array of life that is within the realms. Better than most, in fact. And I have no fear you will be able to keep their natures for the most part a non-issue. But I will point out the legal advantage of being able to shield any undue inquiry with hunters' rights and the autonomy that they ensure. Ordis smiled, thinking a moment. I'll contact you by license in, say, 12 hours. Do you think you will have your answer by then, Hunter and Sorte? That will not be necessary, Hunter, Skychild alone. Optor's gaze was unflinching, for he knew what to do. So you have your answer. Very well then, let's hear it. I will accept your offer, so long as Unka and Lasara are listed as my agents, just as Tranos is. I will take full responsibility for them, as I do him. Ordis smiled and just nodded for him to continue. Additionally, I want my rank frozen. 1 new star for this adventure. There is no avoiding that now without raising suspicion. But after that, no more. I would prefer to be able to blend in. For now, at least. Done and done. I'll drop their agent cards into your pocket. Now. And, to Optor's amazement, he did. Ordis continued with a smile on his face. Being the god of the Cognati and Cog space has some benefits from time to time. That being done, I am also forwarding a file to your license. When you are settled and ready for action, I would like you to take care of the subject matter covered within. I am assuming you will be ready to go within, say, a month? Yes, sir. That is a reasonable estimation. I have to still fully examine the vessel. This meeting was a bit impromptu. Ordis merely chuckled at the thinly disguised complaint. Then I will let you get back to it. Welcome to the Reliquarians, Optor. Don't tell a soul beyond your agents, or you will have to answer to me. With that, Optor found himself back on the bridge of his newly acquired ship, hands still on the Cogcom unit he had just powered up. Looking around, it seemed that no time had passed during his meeting, and no one but Tranos, Lasara, and Unka seemed to notice anything amiss. Even then, they looked at him with some confusion on their faces, as if whatever means Ordis had used to conduct the meeting, they had been able to sense but not understand what was happening. After moving to Optor's ready room, and a brief but thorough explanation of the change in situation and status, Optor handed Unka and Lasara their agent cards. Near replicas of his own, with a silver stripe across their face. With these, they would have the rights and authority of a hunter, but only while in the service of Optor or at his direction. This would make them effectively immune to most forms of civil or criminal harassment, so long as Optor himself did not revoke their status. And with that, the three of them began the various tasks and duties that would need to be completed if they were to be ready to begin this assignment within a month. The Jamalos and their Analar elders had requested to remain on board and assist Optor if at all possible, and with the nature of his new role, it seemed a reasonable request to agree to. They were in need of a crew if they were to operate this ship with any efficiency, and the Jamalos, if nothing else, were dedicated to whatever tasks one would set before them, and thus open-minded and easy to train in the duties required. Within a month, they'd be more than ready to face whatever was to come next. In a day, they'd be ready to make way to the nearest cog gate, a trip that looked to take a week at the least. Plenty of time to figure things out, and all far easier when the crew was so earnestly and honestly loyal. Only one question still lingered in Optor's mind as he stepped out from his ready room. What were the hunters going to do about the world he had just escaped? Risk sending an expedition vessel? Thankfully, it was no longer his problem. Ortis sat on a bench in the Imagia room as the images faded, smiling at Optor's youthful fire. He would make an excellent reliquarian, and Ortis was eager to see what greatness Optor in Sorte would find himself the center of in the execution of his duties. His thoughts were cut short by a cough, and he turned to see a man in the entrance arch of the room. So, now that's done, what about the Antani? Killian's sky-child asked, seemingly more at ease, having seen that Optor was indeed alive and well. For his many faults, Killian did care deeply about his creations, the Praetors. Well, from the data and your Praetor's assessment, it's clear that this is a problem that requires an extreme response. Thankfully, Optor made sure to evacuate the civilians when he left, and that makes things much easier. That is still not an answer. You aren't thinking of sending a hunter's kill team, are you? With all the rising activity across the realms, we are starting to be spread awfully thin. Killian's head tilted, as if remembering some forgotten note. What about the strike team proposal out of Lunadraxis? I may not approve of the Praetors being the head of or organizing aggressive combat task forces, both as a rule and a matter of principle. I am beginning to see the Antani as a valid exception. Killian, that's what the claw tip was supposed to be. Ortis began. How they managed to stumble on this world during their shakedown run, I will refrain from speculating on for now. However, it's clear if even they had been aware of it, they would have been woefully under-equipped for such an action to even have a small chance of success. Killian's face curled at the assessment, but Ortis continued. Far too many Antani for such a relatively small team. No, I think the answer to this problem is to send a force that will ensure that compliance is achieved. Ortis's pointed look almost made his fellow god and Kriston shudder, as Killian knew well what hell Ortis was proposing to unleash. After a moment or two of intense thought, Killian began to nod and smile. Over-under on if she can hide her enthusiasm at the challenge. No bet, Killian. However, I am going to need you to ensure the local area is clear of anyone or thing that could either be in danger or observing. I think about a light year in all directions, just to be safe. I'll take care of it, Ordis. You go tell her the news. Have her contact me with any necessary details and timetables. Killian turned to leave, only to pause mid-step on hearing Ordis's response. I will, and you be sure to appraise Her Majesty. And please, pass along my regards, as well as to your father for Optor's ship. Killian turned around with no sign of mirth or jest in his eyes. That ship isn't one of my father's works, Ordis. It's impressive, but it's not his handiwork. Before Ordis could respond, Killian continued. That is an entirely separate problem that needs to be addressed. And yes, I will look into it. I am a time warden, after all. The last was but an echo in the room, as Killian had left on waves of his temporal power. Now alone, Ordis stood and made his way out. Contacting Griffin with an update, Ordis prepared to initiate something that many thought was inevitable, but most who were aware never wanted to see come to pass. In a secure and secret room, Ordis approached a small console, inputting the series of codes and keys to bring it to life. The image of a golden faceplate came into being and addressed him. Ordis Skychild Alon, while your company is always welcome and your counsel always valued, I must inquire as to the meaning of using this method of communication. Could you not just reach out with your cog-comms? The faceplate was unmoving, with only eyelights pulsing with his speech. Reliquarian Order of Action 2323. The face actually moved, away from the visual pickup in shock, but Ordis continued without pause. I require an immediate meeting with your boss, and she needs to clear her schedule. I shall arrive in 5 minutes, and there is work to be done. Confirm ROA 2323. We shall be ready for your arrival. The commander is en route and steps to cover her other duties are underway. The faceplate seemed to freeze, as if sensing something from Ordis. You have a question? Yes, Ordis began. What is it like to kill a world? I know we can rebuild after any deployment with the Celestians, but it's like killing a bug, an animal, or even a man. It gets easier the more you do it. I don't like the sound of that. You shouldn't. See you in a few minutes. Ordis, Skychild alone. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching,